today, the question before us is public schools, public enemy number one, maybe today. Who knows? We've got three people here working very hard to make sure that public schools are something that is actually a public good instead of a public bad, which is kind of where we are right now. But the first thing I want to start with is this thing that's going on in New Hampshire right now. Here we go. There has been a bill proposed, and you guys will give me the updates, in the state of New Hampshire called HB 544 that basically tries to outlaw critical race theory the same way Donald Trump's executive order tried to do as he was wrapping up his term. Now, this to me sounds like a wonderful idea. How has it been received? Karlyn, tell us, what's been going on in New Hampshire?
Well, it has been a wild ride in New Hampshire with this bill. So essentially what this bill would do would ban state funding in state agencies and in state contractors, which would include schools to dedicate to critical race theory training. And, you know, this seemed like it was going to be an easy bill because New Hampshire, the Republicans control everything. They control the House, they control the Senate, and they control the governor. Or the governor, well, allegedly is a Republican. But what started happening a couple of weeks ago is our governor actually started taking talking points from the Democrats and is now threatening to veto the bill if it makes its way to his desk on free speech considerations, which of course, as we know, you know, the government does not have free speech protections. The citizens have free speech protections. And so we're working on that right now. Now, in relation to the school specifically, we actually just got confirmation yesterday that the largest school district in New Hampshire, which is the Manchester School District, is actually mandating anti-whiteness training for their teachers and their students. So, you know, one of the arguments that we've received here is that this sort of thing just doesn't happen in New Hampshire. Well, guess what? Now we have absolute confirmation that it does happen in New Hampshire. And so that's what the bill is trying to solve for.
And can you just be specific with what the bill is supposedly prohibiting here? Because I found that this New Hampshire thing is wonderful example of backing people into untenable positions, where if they're going to reject your assertion, they look like monsters, which is a good moral, strategic position to take. What are they trying to ban outright?
Yeah, so the bill bans certain divisive concepts. So, for example, you would not be able to teach that one race is superior to another race. You would not be able to teach that the United States is a fundamentally racist country or that New Hampshire is a fundamentally racist state. And you would not be able to teach that people should feel guilty based on the skin color or the gender with which they were born, which to me seems like a no-brainer, but apparently not.
And there's actually people on the floor in New Hampshire saying, I vote against this because I want to reserve these rights. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. The Democrats have actually tried 3 different talking points at this point to try to kill this bill. The first was that it was a racist bill. That didn't stick because it very literally bans teaching racism.
It's actually anti-racist.
It is actually an anti-racist bill. The second thing they tried to say was that the bill was transphobic, which was really confusing to everyone because it doesn't even mention trans people in the bill. And the last one that they've tried, and this one is the one that has teeth, is they're saying that it inhibits free speech. And so the governor is saying he's going to veto it. He's saying that based on free speech grounds. But of course, we know that's not true either, because when this training comes in schools or organizations or wherever, they're literally compelling your speech, which is an unconstitutional thing to do. So the governor's on the wrong side of this one, and we're working very hard to try to talk reason to him.
Fantastic. You know, that would be an amazing thing. Reason, not necessarily in high supply these days. And Christopher, you've discovered this time and time again. You, sir, are out there throwing bombs everywhere that you can. You've organized a whole team of lawyers, and you've got an entire network nationwide of people giving you information and leading you to where this nonsense is popping up in our schools. What have you been up to lately, Christopher? And what are you seeing yourself on this same theme?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I don't think of myself as a bomb thrower, but I think you're exactly right. You know, there was an article that came out in the Chronicle of Higher Education, which is the kind of professional journal for college professors. And they wrote this article and they said, you know, a professor's worst nightmare is that anti-woke warrior Chris Rufo will get documents from your classroom, put them on Twitter, and then give them to Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and ruin your mentions forevermore. And I found it just absolutely phenomenal that college professors are having nightmares about me. It just is. It's a great sign of some of my some of my work. I'm making all the right enemies. But
Exactly.
my focus lately has been looking at these issues in K through 12 schools, and it's truly horrific. I'll just give you some examples for people who are listening and say, well, critical race theory, it's just a theory. It just says that we need to look at race as a lens to understand American society. But this is how it works in practice. In Cupertino, California, they're forcing first graders to deconstruct their sexual and racial identities and then rank themselves according to their power and privilege. In a middle school in Springfield, Missouri, not exactly a blue state, they're separating teachers between oppressor and oppressed, telling white male Christians that they are inherently the oppressor class, and then telling women, people of color, and sexual minorities that they are inherently oppressed and that they all suffer from covert white supremacy. Or in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they're taking fifth graders, forcing them to celebrate, quote, black communism, and then having them simulate a black power rally to free Angela Davis from prison, where she had once been held on murder charges. That's what they're doing in Philly. And then in Buffalo, New York, they've created a Black Lives Matter mandatory curriculum stating that, quote, all white people perpetuate systemic racism. They claim that white wealth is derived from slavery, and whites are, quote, unfairly rich. They even have a lesson for kindergartners where they show them a dramatization of dead black children, warning these 4 and 5-year-olds that they could be murdered by, quote, racist police at any moment. This is the expression of critical race theory in practice. This is what happens when you take a bad intellectual idea and then you digest it and reformulate it as school curriculum. It's not only shocking and morally wrong, but as Karlyn pointed out, these things are also violations of the First Amendment because they compel speech that violates students' conscience. They're a violation of the 14th Amendment because they traffic in racial hostilities that target one group on the basis of a protected category. And they're also a violation, this is the great irony, they're a violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, especially in public schools. You can't traffic in racial stereotypes, you can't assign collective guilt to people based on race, and you can't create a racially hostile employment environment. So this is what's happening in our public schools, and I think Corey has some good solutions on what we could do about it.
He definitely does. And we're going to get to that. I just want to drill down one layer deeper here, Christopher. When people send you information like this, when you get whistleblowers and concerned parents sending you information and doing FOIA requests. Speaking of which, my FOIA request of DC PCSB is supposed to be delivered on 3/22. We will see how that works out.
22, nice.
In 3 days, but it's been over 9 months. Yeah. It's been over 9 months now. So we'll see. They've been delaying based on COVID and emergency shutdowns and all this stuff. And it's fun. Sorry, tangent here. It's fun emailing my FOIA requests to the head legal counsel over there at the District of Columbia Public Charter School Board because I know them. And I know where all the bodies are buried. I have requested from them every instance that critical race theory, racism, white supremacy, all the buzzwords were written, spoken, mentioned, considered on teleconferences, on video conferences, in text messages between administration members, because I know that they don't segregate their phones. So we're going to be able to get into all their personal phones, or they're going to destroy evidence and FOIA materials. We'll see how that works out. But Christopher, what do you do when somebody sends you a hot pile of steaming crap? How do you turn that around, and what happens, and how can people get more of this information to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. I have a secure email drop. It's just chrisrufo@protonmail.com. That's where it all comes in. I have an incredible research assistant who sifts through it and then highlights stuff for me that is noteworthy. And I've developed a database now of more than 1,000 different sources in local, state, and federal institutions. And, I always kind of take a look at it. And I think one of the skills that I've developed, and I think a reason I've been successful with this, is that I can take this raw material, but I can translate it into a coherent story, a coherent narrative that gets people's emotional buttons, that touches people intellectually, that also provides the context to understand these things. Because you can hear about, like, for example, the California Ethnic Studies model curriculum. that is actually public documents. It wasn't even a leak. You have to understand critical theory. You have to understand the pedagogy of the oppressed. You have to understand all of the contextual cues in order to make it a kind of salient story. And then I looked through 1,000 pages of documents, and then I discovered that one of the authors who had accused white Christians of theocide, so of killing the gods of native peoples, in his scholarly work, had actually designed a chant where 6 million California public school students theoretically could be chanting to the Aztec god of human sacrifice in order to become, quote, warriors for social justice. So, I mean, this is a public document, but no one had quite spotted and reconstructed the story where it's saying, hey, wait a minute, you have a guy who is saying that, you need to decolonize America, that white Americans have committed theocide and genocide and kind of culturecide against these cultures, and now we need to resurrect the Aztec gods and then have 6 million California school kids basically pray to these gods to become social justice warriors. I mean, this is a level of insanity that is embedded in these documents, and I think the problem is that people aren't looking, people don't have the time to sift through it, and it's going to take those of us who are actually have the time and energy and motivation to get this stuff done.